Hello, Kathy McDaniel.
Hello, Josh.
Welcome to the Edlow podcast. This is another one that's a big exciting one for me. I love talking about the afterlife, near-death experience, and you've had a near-death experience,
Yes, I have a
and it seems
biggie.
like it seems like a big one. You went all over the place.
I did. I traveled. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that you're willing to come on and share your story. I've had a couple other ones on here, and it's been very fascinating to hear. But I want to start by asking a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up? Tell me about your family, where you are in the birth order.
Wow. My dad was in the Navy, so we traveled. We moved all over the country. We were Midwest, East Coast, Midwest, West Coast. Um, and then I've traveled since then. I'm now in the Pacific Northwest. But I was the first of three children, and we were a very religious family. My dad was shot down over the Philippines during World War II and made a pact with God. He landed upside down on a beach and his plane caught fire. So he said, God, if you can get me out of here, I'll become a Catholic. He had been a former atheist.
Huh.
So we were Catholic and went to Catholic schools and the whole trip. So I bought that whole religion
Hmm.
hook, line, and sinker, which um, affected my afterlife.
Interesting. Well, that was what I was going to ask. I've had a couple other people on who have dealt with this and or experts in this. And one thing that's interesting that I think that people say is that there's a lot of commonalities in near-death experience, but that because of a lot of these things are kind of indescribable. The way that you describe them are in ways that you have filtered through your own personal biases or your own personal stuff. So that's why I wanted to ask is you grew up in a religious home, so that probably colored how you interpreted what you saw. Is that fair?
I think not only interpreted, it also it made what I saw
Hmm.
and the hell experience. Um, I was taught from a very early age that when I died, I would go to purgatory. Even though I was baptized and Jesus died for my sins, there were still things that I would have to pay for. And
Hmm.
so I believed that. And even though you could go, say a rosary and get 300 days off your time in purgatory or do an extra mass, it was a big math game, and I still worried about what would happen to me when I died, and that went with me.
Wow. So, do you think that that also colored where you went and what you saw?
Yeah, I think I manifested the whole thing. I expected to go to a hellish place, and I did.
Mm.
There were all kinds of terrible beings and things that happened, but um, when over the years since I've been back, and since I've talked to other people with hellish experiences, say too that they remember segments, a lot of them do. The segments I've been able to track back to things that happened in my life that were hellish. So
Mm.
knowing now when I got to heaven to, mix with God and see my previously dead fiance, uh, I understood that God is love, period, and does not judge. I mean, I learned a lot of what I believe now from the hundreds of people I've been interacting with for the last 12, 13 years in the IONS group. That's the International Association of Near Death Studies. It's a lot of formerly dead people,
Hmm.
very nice people, very uplifted people. Yeah, it's the theorem that they all espouse too is that souls, everything is God. I mean, they're finding that now with dark matter and energy and all of that. Everything's God. And
Hmm.
so we start off as souls, which is pieces of God. Earth is like a school. We choose to come down and learn things, take our soulmates, and there's lots of reincarnation. You can come here more if you want to. Most people, I wouldn't think. I don't think I'll come here again.
I think one trip around this earth is enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's good. I've been told we're the brave souls. There's some sort of badge we're going to get or something. But anyway, it's a place where you go and work stuff out. And when you die, you get on the other side and you get a life review. And that's with a couple of really nice guides or angels. And it's like watching a movie, and you get to see your whole life from birth to death and observe it. And you check out, okay, I had certain things I wanted to learn, whether it's, charity or your honesty or something, see how you did. And the tricky thing is they flip that around, and then you get to see the whole thing again from the point of view of the people that you interacted with. In other words, you get to see how you treated other people and how they felt about that.
Oh,
And
wow.
if you were in a particularly nasty mood and you wrote somebody the riot act and they felt crushed or they felt hurt, you will get to experience that. And that's not a punishment or a judgment. It's just you're here to learn how you did. And now you get to understand it. So when people ask, well, gee whiz, what about people like Hitler? You mean he doesn't go to hell? And it's like, no, but he gets to feel all the horror and pain and misery that he inflicted on not only those people, but their families. I mean, what else can you do to the guy? So since I've absorbed all of that, I look at life a lot differently now.
That's interesting. There's a couple of things I want to parse out from that, but the first one being, and I want to also go back and kind of chronologically go through how this happened. But do you ever, is there ever a doubt in your mind that maybe you didn't actually experience it, that it was something else, a hallucination, anything like that?
Of course, the first couple of years I thought that, but after 23 years, I accept that happened in my soul, not in my brain. I had been in a coma for almost 3 weeks. And the last thing the doctor told me was, we're going to give you something here and you will not be able to remember a thing. So 23 years later that I can remember every minute. I've let go of that.
So now another thing I wanted to ask you is, so this, you think, based on what you've learned, that we come down here specifically, I want to make sure I understood what you said. Is it your belief that we come down here to Earth to have you said is like school, but is it a school? We actually come down here with the intention of learning specific things?
I didn't get a life review. I wasn't there long enough, but I've talked to enough people that all over the world who had this experience, and that they felt that we choose our lives. One person even said there's a committee. You got to get you go up, you choose your soulmate. You say, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to live. This is what, and they say yes or no as to whether that's an appropriate thing for your soul. It's so different on the other side than what we've been taught. And I love when I hear something new, but when you think of how huge eternity is, and we've got these little tiny, human brains, to go over there and come back and then try and explain that in human language, you fall short. So it's everything is, it's like, and I find that interesting because when Jesus used to tell his parables, it's, the kingdom of God is like, it's ineffable on the other side, basically.
Yeah. So, do you still consider yourself Christian, Catholic?
No.
No. Okay.
When I got back, I started having trouble just even saying the prayers. I mean, simple little things like the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Well, spoiler alert, there are no bodies in heaven. It was things like he sits at the right hand of the Father in a throne. There's no thrones. It's metaphors is what we're dealing with here, and it's not the reality of what's on the other side. So I had to let it go. Yeah, I'm spiritual now. That's what people who've been through what I have, we're considered spiritual, not religious. Religious to us is too confining.
So based on what, and like I said, I definitely want to go through just chronologically what you saw. So based on your experience, based on the things that you saw, what do you think that the purpose of all of this really is? And let me make sure I make it clear what I'm asking. Not necessarily, I
Yeah,
know you think that this is a school, but I mean, what's the purpose of all of it? Is it progression? Is it to become something more?
I think we learn. And yes, from what I can understand, there's a hierarchy of some sort of souls, and you can work your way up in your quote vibration, which, again, sounds kind of new agey, but that's, it's probably what happens. Like anything, there's evolution to it. You become more enlightened, whatever the heck that means. I'm along for the ride in this human experience, trying to grasp at what that means. But that's the general feeling I get, is that karma is real. I mean, you put out and then you get back, simply speaking. And so I guess the object would to become a nicer, kinder, lovable spirit. But we won't really know till we get over there and stay.
So let's talk about what happened. So you mentioned you were in a coma for 3 weeks. How old were you when this happened?
53.
Okay. And so at 53 years old, what precipitated the stroke?
Wasn't a stroke. I caught, I
Sorry,
was,
the coma.
yeah,
Yeah.
a coma. Yeah, I'd been taking care of my former fiance because he had leukemia, and he needed 2 caregivers when he came to Seattle to get a stem cell transplant. So I volunteered, and it was supposed to be a 3-month affair, and it turned into almost 9 months. The other caregiver broke her foot, so I was taking care of both of them. And there's like very little sleep, a lot of trauma, a lot of stress, and then he died. And I was just a wreck. So I happened to go to a concert in Southern California, and there was this huge flu going around, and I caught it. And by the time I got back home, it had gone into pneumonia. And then I called a friend in the middle of the night, said, I'm coughing up blood. I can't get down my 3 flights of stairs. So he took me to a doc in the box. And before we got there, I stepped out of the car and went bye-bye. And he carried me in. There was no pulse. Got me in an ambulance. They took me to ICU, and I was put into emergency, and then in intensive care for 3 weeks while I was in the coma. And then I came out and was there another week. And then I had to go to rehab, physical rehab, for a month because I weighed 86 pounds and I had no muscle mass or muscle memory left. So I had to start all over again. And it was a tough time.
Wow. So where does the experience happen in that timeline? Is it in the middle of the coma or after?
There's no time over there, so I have no idea. All I know is when I got back, my doctor and my family said that at one point came in and said, we're losing her. You better say your goodbyes. So I assume it was then. All I know is that they told me it was all happened kind of quickly. And, we have to do this, we don't know how to treat you. It's a syndrome. We can't just give you antibiotics. We're going to have to put you in a coma, and then we'll throw the book at you. And we don't want you to know what's going on. So we're going to put you in a coma. And it's like, okay. And they said, the last thing, you won't be able to remember a thing. Don't worry about it. So I was in darkness or nothingness. I was just gone, like a deep sleep, I guess, where you're not dreaming. But then I woke up, and I'm kind of looking around, and it's pitch dark and there's no sound. And I'm thinking, what's going on? How'd I get here? And I couldn't remember anything about the hospital or my life. I was just this me, but in a weird situation. And then it started to progress. There was it was like a reddish glow happened, and I thought the sun was coming up. So I thought, well, I'll just hang out and see what happens. But as it got lighter, I could discern this kind of roiling fog. And I started hearing shrieks and moans, and it started to smell bad, and it was getting too hot. And I thought, I don't know what's going on, but this can't be good. And then all of a sudden, out of the fog comes this horrible, mean voice that just says, do you know where you are? And I'm thinking, hell. And then that thing boomed back with this maniacal laugh. And I took off into the darkness and ran. At no time did I think, oh, good grief, I'm dead, because your soul is you, and your soul is your personality. And I had no idea until the very end of this whole long adventure, when someone made mention that we were in hell. And that's when it dawned on me. But in the meantime, I had segments. The lights would go out and I would freeze. And then the lights would come up, usually too bright. And there would be this unusual situation. The first one was a bombed out city, looked like New York. And the windows are blown out of the skyscrapers. And there's fallen concrete with rebar sticking up. There's sounds like tanks or something going on. There's people wandering. I mean, just imagine yourself, boom, there you are in a situation like that, having no idea how you got there. So I tried to find some shelter to kind of gather my wits. And as I was running to try and get to climb up this thing to get on the other side, I thought maybe if I got in a building, there might be some people. And I fell backwards into this, and I thought I was going to fall in the concrete, and I thought, oh God, this is going to hurt. But the lights went out, and then the lights came up, and I was someplace else. And in a couple of these places, there were demons. I mean, Bigfoot type things, ugly, mean, spoke perfect English, however, and they would give me these tasks to do, which were unpleasant and beyond unpleasant.
Like what? Like what?
Well, I think one of the worst was this. I was told we were in this hospital that I had to go into this room, and the doctors would hand me something, and then I would have to come across in front of the demon in the hallway into another room and put that object down, and then go back and forth. And this was my job. And he had like an iron truncheon, and he was making sure I was going to get this job done. Well, I wandered into that room thinking maybe I could find a way out, or maybe there was some people. And I just saw all these beds like gurneys lined up, and there were stools in front of them, and I assume doctors sitting on them. They had white coats on, and they were working between these legs that were splayed. And one of the doctors waved a bloody hand up in the air and said, "Get over here." And I thought, oh shit, okay. So I ran over, and he said, "Put your arms out." And I did. And he had been doing an abortion on this woman. And he slopped what was left of this baby in my arms. And I freaked. I mean, I was a pro-lifer. And wow. I just wandered back in the hall, and the demon said, "Over there." And I went into this room, and there were just piles and piles of these aborted babies. And the stench was intense. And I came back in the hall, and I says, "I'm not going to do this." And he says, "Oh, no, you are going to do this. This is your job." And I says, "I'm not going to do it." And he raised that truncheon and says, "You'll be sorry. It always gets worse." And the lights went out. So this would, there was a road I was on for part of the time. That was just like a moonscape. I never felt dead. I mean, I got tired. I got angry. I got thirsty. I just didn't understand where I was. No moon, no stars, no clock, no nothing. It was just endless. And I just kept running into one situation after another like that. But like I say, when I got home, and the last one went click about a few months ago, this has been 20-something years, but I was in the earthquake in Santa Cruz in 1989. And I was under my desk as the 7-point earthquake took the town down. And it was concrete and windows blown out and sirens and fires and people screaming. And I thought, that's the last hellish piece I took with me to make my hell. But that's been, 2 decades and talking to a lot of people who have had, similar experiences. This is something that's been rather a torturous affair.
So, you mentioned that we don't know much about what's going on, and you said, well, God doesn't really judge us, but why do you think it was that you went to this hellish experience?
I expected to.
Hmm.
I'd been
So,
taught my whole life I would go there, and I believed it. Plus, I believe now, too, is that something I chose, because my mission is to come back and kind of spread this information. God is all loving, all forgiving. And if somebody tells you you're going to go to hell for this, that, or the other thing, they're wrong.
hmm.
Um, I've got a group of people, that come and go that have had these experiences. I had one guy today. I was selling my book this afternoon at a barbecue place, and he came up and said, he looked at the book and he said, I drowned. And I said, I'll be darned. He was in the military, and he was, underwater for, I don't know, he said 30 minutes. And they had the body bag people ready to pick him up. And he came up and he says, no, I was someplace and it was totally black and it was totally quiet. And I says, oh yeah, the void. I've been there. And he says, well, I didn't know what it was, but when it got bright, he says, somebody had a hand on my shoulder. And I thought I heard, he says, I sensed 2 beings behind me, and I think they were going to judge me. I think it was Jesus. I think it was God, and they were going to judge me. And then I heard them say, well, if he wants to go back, he can. And he said, yeah, I want to go back. And he did. And he said, so running into you today, I need to ask you what that was about, So this happens all the time. And I said, no, you're not being judged. You had a chance to come back, and you did. So we talked a bit, and he says, I am so glad I ran into you today. I really needed to talk to somebody. So
Wow.
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you it sounds like then your hell experience was you didn't know where you were. It was pitch black.
At
Then
first, that's the void.
the
Almost
void.
everybody goes there first, even if they're going the other directions. Kind of like a waiting room, a little space where you kind of, I don't know, transition.
And this demon that you described, these demons, what do they look like? Do they look like humans or something different?
No, they look like, you know what? When I was a kid, I watched every monster movie there ever was. So these look like Bigfoot monsters.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Except they had clothes.
Like Bigfoot, like Harry and the Hendersons Bigfoot?
Yeah, hairy like that, but with clothes on. And like I said, when they spoke perfect English, I was shocked. But they were mean, like this one says, you can, the first one I ran into, he says, I can get you out of here. You want to get out of here? I said, well, yeah, I don't know where I am, but yeah, I want to get out of here. He says, do me one job. I got one job for you. They kept saying that job started getting worse and worse each time. But he said, he waved his hand, and here's, as far as you can see, all these blackberry bushes and vines just looping everywhere, all the thorns and everything. And he just said, you cut those down for me and I'll get you out. And then he hands me these scissors that kids use to cut paper in kindergarten, and laughs, belly laughs, So I thought, you jerk. I didn't know where I was, what was going on, but I thought, okay, I'll play along. So I scritched down in there. I'm getting all cut up, and I was trying to gnaw on this damn cane, and it took forever. And finally I got it loose, and I put it behind me to reach for another one, and it grew back all the way to where it was. And this demon is laughing. He thinks that's funny. So that was my introduction.
Wow.
There were zombies. Yeah. That was a very unpleasant situation. That was probably the worst.
Well, what do the zombies eat if there's no bodies?
They attack others. And like I say, this was my hell. I don't know what they do in anybody else's hell, but that in my hell, that's what they were doing. They were attacking people.
So you're actually just so I maybe you don't know. I'm just asking. So you are actually this is your soul. So you don't have a body, but you're viewing things as if it's in like an earthly form.
You don't know you're dead. No.
Yeah. But okay, so can you feel almost similarly to like you have a body?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the sensations, I don't know. It's not here, all right, but it's real when you're there. I mean, that's your reality is that.
You mentioned there's no time, but did this, I mean, it sounds like this was a long period if you're doing all these
Yeah.
different tasks.
Yeah, when I got back, I'm laying in the hospital. I can't move. I can't talk. I can't do anything. And this is all rattling around in my head. So I tried to reconstruct it to feel, how long was I gone? But I mean, it was only seconds or minutes Earth time. But
Felt like forever.
anybody that's been on the other side understands that there's no time. Time is kind of a construct of Earth and in this universe. It doesn't happen everywhere. I mean, we have, everything spins and then the moon goes this way and the tide comes in. And that's not in heaven or the afterworld. There's no time. It's always now.
So this hell place that you're at, did you ever visit with what would be considered the devil or Satan?
Nope.
Okay.
Just the demons. And I saw a couple of people that I know that were relatives and they are alive. That was weird. I had to give them both messages when I got back. And I did. And that didn't go well for one. And the other one, it did.
So the messages were, hey, if you keep up what you're doing, this is where you're going to go?
Pretty much.
Interesting.
But it was not, it was, your life is going to be hellish. That was more the, it wasn't a judgment thing. Is the way you're going is going to make you really unhappy. And you probably need to take a look at this.
So how did you, this part of the experience, how did you interpret that, I guess? Like, what do you think if we're not judged necessarily, and that God loves us all and is merciful to everybody, what did you make of that hellish place?
That I manifested it. Okay,
so is it your belief based on your experience that the afterlife, there's some sense your afterlife will be what you manifest?
The God part now. I mean, God is God, no matter what you think, I could not, when I got out of there, at the end by being a brat again. And
by being a brat again? What do you mean?
Yeah, by that? I mean, I would just buck them. That's that my book is Misfit in Hell. I don't like bullies. I don't like being told what to do. And so when I spoke up, and at the very end, I was with this, oh God, it was a horrible experience with a bunch of ladies who had all been raped by the zombies and had trudged through the snow. And now we're in this little hut with the snow and coming down, and the lady demon says, now we wait for customers. I mean, it couldn't get much worse. So
hold on, stop right there. So was there was a moment there where you were essentially like, you were put into like almost like a sex slavery for
or
demons?
For hell is how I interpreted that one.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you actually experienced this while you're there?
Well, I had been gang raped by zombies, so this was going to be a little less traumatic.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, this is hell. The hellish thing.
No, that's when you said that the whole abortion thing was the craziest, I think.
No, that was the start. That was the start.
I would say being gang raped by zombies seems like it's a little higher level.
I told you it was incrementally worse, and so I thought after that experience, it couldn't get much worse. But then if I'm going to be, waiting for customers, God knows what kind of customers that would have looked like. But I said to this demon lady, I've been here a long time, and I don't know what it is, but I feel like this is a particularly dense day. Is it heavy to you? I mean, I'm being sarcastic to this thing. And she says, well, it's Christmas on earth. That's always the worst day in hell. And I said, hell? And I thought, oh my gosh, that's what happened. No wonder it doesn't make sense. And I thought, this is pissing me off, is what I'm thinking. And I said, oh, okay. And it's Christmas, huh? And so I started singing a Christmas carol, which I knew would bug her. And I did. So it's away in a manger, no crib for his bed. And she's yelling, shut up. And the other ladies with me start singing, the little Lord. And we got to that part and she shrieked and jumped at me. And I closed my eyes expecting to go somewhere else because that word Jesus was going to pop out of my mouth. And boom, it's like a helium balloon. It's this big and you put it on the helium and you go whoosh. I am filled with such bliss and such joy and such love that you couldn't have that in a human body and not explode. It was just insanely wonderful. And I forgot everything that had happened before. And I was just tumbling in this miraculous glowing love. And as it kind of settled or coalesced a little bit, I could see that I was kind of in a room that was, I don't know, white marble. But it wasn't a room because it was like puffy and stuff. And I looked over and I saw my friend who had died the month before.
Oh, wow.
And I noticed
your fiance, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was there and he looked great. When you die of leukemia, you don't look so good. And so he was looking like he was 35. His hair was brown instead of gray. He was wearing a sweater I bought him, and he's grinning ear to ear. I noticed out of the corner of my eye, a big table, which I thought was out of place, with a huge book open halfway. And I knew that he was showing me something in that book, but I couldn't remember what it was. And later, I think he was showing me that I was halfway through my life and it wasn't over. So anyway, I put that out of my mind and I thought, oh, I'm not going to be the one to tell him he's dead, and he started laughing and I wasn't speaking out loud. So I knew that was telepathic. And then I thought, oh my gosh, if he's dead, then I'm dead. And this is like the best news ever. I mean, really, I says, why are we standing here? Come on, show me around. And he got a little closer and he said, no, Mary Kay, you've got too much left to do. I thought, they're throwing me out? No, I said that. I stamped my foot and I said, no.
You wanted to stay.
You betcha.
Yeah.
It is fantastic. Just that little glimpse, that little taste it makes you so homesick. Anybody that's been there, well, that's our home. And that's when it really dawns on you that this is a playground. This is school. This is not reality. You really want to go home. And so
let me stop there and ask you. So when you say it's home, did you get a sense that you had been there before?
I belong there.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's where we started. That's where we belong. That's where you're totally happy. It's hard coming down here. It really is, because you get the mind wipe, and you don't know anything, because that would be cheating. And you want to, I wanted to experience things. I wanted to learn things. I wanted to help my soulmates that asked me to please help. And now I say, okay, I'm now 77, thank God. And I've got to get my work done, which is talking to people like that guy that walked into the barbecue shop this afternoon, and spreading the word, to people online like this, the podcasts. And when I get all done, I get to go home.
Yeah. Wow. So talking about that experience then, was that the only experience you had in the heaven portion of your?
Yeah, it was short. Yeah. Just enough. Well, I had to go down. They usually have a timeout period. I was furious. So I had to walk down this little stream. They call it the point of no return. And then I woke up in the hospital. But I was hopping mad. So that probably wouldn't have been good for my heart.
When you woke up, were you angry that you woke up? You're like waking up in And you're like, what the heck? I was just dead and I was fine. What are you guys bringing me back for?
I did. And it was a good thing I couldn't talk. You know, I had the thing in my throat, and I opened my eyes, and now all these people are milling around and I'm hot. And I thought, oh, expletive, I'm back in hell, you know. And then my daughter turns around and says, oh, Mom's back. And I thought, what the hell's going on? And they're all around me, you know, talking too fast. I'm like been in another place, folks. Slow down. And oh, we thought we lost you, and they didn't think they. And then my mother pipes up with, we had a prayer circle going around the world, and we brought you back. And I thought, oh, if I could get my hands on that one. And later, oh, I complained so much for months, you know, oh, why didn't you let me die? I didn't let me, you know, I miss it. And finally, my mother says, I said, next time I'm sick like that, I said, don't save me. And my mother says, honey, don't worry, we won't. You've been bitching for 6 months. Shut up already.
Well, that was another question I was going to have is now that you had this experience, how does your family react? Do they believe you? Do they not?
You know, no. Well, it's been a long time, but at first they wouldn't listen to me at all, because they said, like my mother says, oh, Kathy, what did you do to go to hell that we don't know about? And it's like, you know, no good answer for that one. So they, you know, they didn't want to hear about it. Why didn't Jesus save you? Oh, you know, oh no. So no, they didn't want to hear about it. Nobody wanted to hear about it. So it took me 10 years before I found that IONS group. And then I tried, you know, I went to a couple meetings, and of course they all had the angels and the butterfly adventures and all that. And I'm going, that's not what happened to me. But then one guy says, you know, you don't look real happy at these meetings. And I says, well, I don't belong here. And he says, oh, did you have a hellish experience? You know, like that was a good thing. And I said, yeah. And he says, oh, those are rare. He was all excited. They're only about 3 out of 10. Can you tell us about it? Those are really rare. And I thought, these people are loony. But yes, when I told it, and people started coming out saying, yeah, that happened to me, but you know, nobody talked to me about it. So yeah, I've got a group that meets monthly and I've got a workshop thing I'm working on for our conference. And yeah, there's a lot of people that have had them. And to be able to tell somebody about it and not feel condemned or it just makes all the difference in the world.
Why are they condemning you? Because you went to hell, so they think you must be bad?
Right, because that's what their religion taught them.
Well, but the thing is, this is what's, I think, so interesting about this, just from a Christian perspective. When someone says, well, what did you do to go to hell? Well, I mean, we all have done stuff to go to hell. Right. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like the whole purpose of Christianity is like, we'll all go to hell if we don't accept Christ. Right. So
that's every religion says, if you don't do what we say, you're going to hell.
Right. But my point is that, like, at least I don't know about other religions, but I know with Christianity, it's like, you are definitely going to hell because you're not like nobody can I mean, Jesus said, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Well, that's impossible. So we all are going to hell, right? Unless we accept the Savior and we get,
or you understand that the Bible is a book of metaphors and history, and it was not written by God. Now that gives me a lot of points in the, you know, in the Southern Baptist peoples, but the understanding, you come to understand. I've done a lot of reading and a lot of people talking, and so see, I don't believe that anymore.
So you, now that you've had this experience, you've shifted away from Christianity to spirituality, and what? Tell me what that encapsulates. Has it? I mean, has it changed your moral code, or is it something different?
Oh no! I know. If I'm going to experience everything not nasty and inflict on other people's, that I'm not going to do that. I am. When I came back, it took a couple of months, several months, to finally pray. You know, okay, if I got to throw this other stuff out, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not, covet your neighbor's ass, or whatever that thing was. I was given, be loving and kind, merciful and forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. Just concentrate on being positive things, and that's all you got to do.
So you know what's funny is that even though you no longer hold yourself out as Christian, that sounds a lot like what Jesus said.
That's what was supposed to come through, but it got twisted into, or you go to hell, or you go to hell, or you go to hell. And it doesn't make sense. In the Bible, I love the prodigal son. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What happens? He screws up every way he can. Does his father say, "Oh, I'm going to kill your brother so that you'll be forgiven"? What? No, he just gives him a hug and a coat and come on in. That's who God really is. The same thing with there's the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the merciful, blessed, I can buy the positive things, but if somebody tells me that I'm going to go to hell if I don't do this, that, or the other thing, they don't know what they're talking about.
Well, and they aren't supposed to.
That's being judgmental. That's
right.
not good.
And you're not supposed to do that. In fact, I think Jesus is the one who told you not to do that. So if you're a Christian and you're doing it, that's bad. But
yeah.
But as far as your experience then, as you're going through it,
yeah.
Tell me how it's changed your perspective. You mentioned it changed your life, change your perspective. What actually, before we go into that though, let me ask you, when you I'm sure also the deconstruction of your Christian faith probably took a little bit of time. Did you, when you woke up or even as you were going to hell, did you have any sense of like, oh yeah, I'm going to hell? Like there's something I've done. I don't want to know what it is, but was there something that you were like, well, it makes sense I went to hell?
No, I was a good person. I was a good person. I was still going to church every week. I going to confession, going to doing positive things. It's just that no, I wasn't a murderer or a rapist or stealing money from people. That whole thing. If Christ died for our sins, period. That's fine. I can't even get that. I can't, as a mother, think if I love my daughter and my son and I don't know, when you stop and think about it, it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. So, well, none of this makes sense. I was having a conversation with, I did a podcast a couple weeks ago with a couple of friends. A listener wrote in and asked about, they were having the faith, they call them faith journeys now, but they used to be called faith crisis, where they're kind of questioning where their stuff is and all that. And, we had this conversation about this whole concept of I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going. What were you talking about before I
well, the whole thing about Jesus dying for our sins and then we still go to hell. I mean,
no, I know what I'm saying. What I was saying to him was, I go, because I'm Mormon, right? I'm the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and there are people who go, oh, Joseph Smith finding golden plates and translating this Book of Mormon, that sounds crazy. And I go, yeah, any crazier than like a homeless carpenter walking around for 3 years doing all these kind of liberal things for the times, being crucified, and then 3 days later raising up from the dead, and then somehow that means you no longer have to, you are all forgiven of every bad thing you've ever done. That makes more sense than Joseph Smith found a golden plates that translated into the Word of God. Like, it's all crazy. None of this stuff, like none of the spiritual stuff, you can't look at it with a material mind. Like, I think this is where science and religion kind of do this thing where if you're like a materialist and you're looking for what we're talking about is not material. It's spiritual. It's something it's metaphysical. It's something that it's something you can't track in our human minds and our human scales. So all of this stuff that you're talking about, yes, if you're looking at it from a materialistic, physical standpoint, it doesn't make any logical sense. It comes from spirit. It comes from your soul. So now tell me, as you're going through, I want to know how this has shaped you as a person now and how you are different now than you were before.
I would think the biggest thing is I'm no longer a victim.
Mm.
Uh,
Tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
well, all right. When I had my first baby and she was born with these terrible birth defects and she lived for 2 days and they did a terrible operation on her and she died.
Ooh,
I said to God, what the, you know what?
sure.
I have been a good person. I have always followed your, I almost became a nun for crying out loud. And now you do this to me.
Mhm.
You torture that little baby and you kill her. I have trouble with you now. I really do. And now, not only this, but now you are going to blackmail me. And if I don't, continue along this path and do your things, then you're going to send me to hell and I'll never see her again. Ooh, that was a nasty time for me. But
Sure.
now, if I can look at that and say, we planned all that.
Mm.
My daughter was a soul that says, okay, I'll go down for 9 months. I am not doing earth again. Okay. But I will help you learn empathy. I will
Mm.
help you learn uh, in a way that is going to help other people. This will be something. And several of my friends we all had taken these birth control pills that cause birth defects.
Mm.
So I had several girlfriends lose babies. And I had one that said to me, Kathy, you're the only person I can talk to because everybody always says, oh, I know how you feel, or, you'll get over it. And she says, you know how I feel. I feel
Mm.
safe with you. So
Mm.
there's a certain tragedy brings an empathy for people who are in that same situation that is, invaluable. So I realize now I planned all these things. It takes the stress way down. And if I run into something now that looks kind of chaotic or not going to be a good experience, and I say, all right, if I've planned this, there's bound to be something in here I need to really think about and look for. There's a lesson here. And it changes everything.
That does. That does. I want to ask you a question, but well, let me kind of build off of what you just said. I had a motivational speaker on. I think his podcast will probably drop before yours. Um, but he said something really profound when we were talking about life difficulties, and he said, "The pain that you feel doesn't come from the trial. The pain comes from you thinking that you shouldn't have to go through the trial."
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And I said, "Wow, that's really profound," because you think about it, the way I could feel what you were talking about when you felt that anger, because I felt that way before, right? I've had tragedies in my life. I've certainly never lost a baby like that. That is really traumatic, and I feel for you. I couldn't imagine what that was like, but, you know, yeah, I've been in that spot where you look through it and you go, "Wait a minute. Okay, like I say my prayers, I go to church, I pay tithing, I went on a mission, I visit people, I minister to people, I can't think of 3 Sundays in a row that I've missed church in my life, this was not in the cards. This is not what I signed up for." But when
Mhm.
you realize that the good and the bad is all part of a plan that is going to grow you into the person that God wants you to be, then those things that you see there, those trials are really painful things that teach you lessons that make
Plus,
you a better.
you agreed to it. You agreed that would happen. You
That
volunteered. You said, "I will do this for others. I will do this for others."
so that's actually what I want. I'm glad you brought that up because that was the question I wanted to ask you. So based on what you've learned through your experience and hearing the experiences of others, so you actually believe that you participated. You used the word committee before, but like you participated in deciding you are going to come down and these are the things you're going to deal with.
That's because God gave us free will.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, I don't believe anymore that God has a plan for me.
Mm.
I know God gave me free will and said, go for it.
Well,
And
well,
God, God is just love. God is just love. And he loves all his children. He loves us because we're a part of him and he's not a him. Um, it's a lot simpler. I mean, we're just not used to hearing it from this direction. We've
Mhm.
been so indoctrinated by millennia of people that told us, our culture, our religion, we don't know any better.
Yeah.
But something like this wakes you up, believe me.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, it sounds like this gave you a new purpose, and you believe the purpose is to spread the word of what you saw.
Yeah.
Do you think do you see changes in yourself just spiritually that you think are for the better, or any that you think are for the worse as a result of this experience?
No, it's all for the better. I mean, just knowing that we never die, that our loved ones are right here. I mean, my dad and I, he died 3 years ago. He's plays tricks on me. I mean, he sent me an email. I've got an email from my dad after he died. Um, he, I just feel like I'm more part of that world. Um, I'm kind of half here and half there. I know I'm here temporarily. I know where my real home is. I know when I get home, all my friends and families, people's pets, they're all up there. It's a great homecoming. And if I want to come down again, I can. I can go somewhere else. But this free will thing and the eternal aspect of it, we're so used to looking at things spoiling in 4 days, or you die when you're a certain age. But to know that this is forever, you cannot think, oh, I've got to get this all done now because I only got this one chance. Nah, you got plenty. You got plenty of chances, and it's all good.
Mm.
It's all working for good.
So, want to tie this into families. I had Jacob Cooper on not too long ago, and he told me how his experience that he saw made him understand that there was a nature within the family unit that is stronger than just this life. Do
Mm.
you get that same sense? And if you do, how would you describe family?
I think they say there are, well, that's why they call them, gosh, I've lost the word, soulmates.
Mhm.
That they're, yeah, that's their family of soulmates. And that's how I've heard a lot of people talk about it. That I just know when I wrote my memoir that I had to go back several generations. Being a Mormon, you're into that kind of thing,
Yeah.
to know that those, even from a human standpoint, the genes, the propensity to be tending toward alcoholism or violence or whatever, that can be, filtered through to when your soul comes, you pick that body. This is the DNA you're going to have to work with. And
Yeah.
it's got certain things in there that can't be changed. So you're going to have to deal with that. So if that makes any sense, there's a soul, not DNA, but yeah,
You
it's
know,
connected. It's somehow connected.
so I did another podcast with a Mormon scholar named Patrick Mason, who wrote a book on faith journeys and crisis and the gospel. And he said something that I think I'm going to totally murder it. I wish I was as eloquent as he was, but he essentially said something very similar to what you're saying, in that he said, before we were born, we were intelligences. We built into spirit children of a God, and then we come down here and we had our soul. But there's so many things that affect the free will, like the environment we come into and the
Mhm.
DNA that we get. So, for example, like if you're somebody whose parents drank a lot of alcohol, their neurotransmitters went a little different way. There's a greater propensity or greater likelihood that you're going to develop ADD or ADHD because your neurotransmitters don't work the same, right?
Right.
That is not something that maybe that's something you chose. We
Mhm.
don't know, but the point is when you have this idea of commandments and gods and things that you're supposed to do, there's so many things that affect your ability to do those things that a judgment is really hard to do uniformly. Even if there was a judgment, it would have to be very specific and individual because of all of these factors that affect you. It sounds like that's what you're saying, is that you come down as a soul and you want to learn specific things, but then you get this body that you didn't necessarily have anything to do with, that comes from generations of DNA and the environmental factors and things in the air and the type of food people are eating and all these different things that turn you into the person you are.
No, I believe that I chose that body.
Really?
I've chose everything. I wanted that body, and it was for a specific reason. I wanted that family for a specific reason. There's alcoholism rife in my family. I've had to deal with that. My brother died of alcoholism. My sister, I don't know. I don't judge anybody, but I had been a heavy drinker at one time, but now I don't drink at all. So, I think that's all part of it. And it's not a judgment, and it's not me saying that I'm better than somebody else. I chose better than somebody else. The point is just to be here and not be judgmental. That's a huge thing. I don't know about you if you're judgmental, but I have a hard time sitting in a large room where, selling my books and all these people are coming and going. And my human brain says, oh my God, that woman is so overweight, or, oh my God, I have to stop myself 100 times a day and stay non-judgmental. And that's not being kind. And so I'm learning all the time, but I'm aware. And that's, I guess, where we have to get not judge myself, to just say, no, I'm going to choose to be loving and kind on this. I'm just going to.
Well, I think that 75% of the battle is being self-aware of it. I think that it's interesting because I very often, like I said before, I don't know how much it picked up, but 75% of it is really being self-aware, because I know so many people who just aren't. They'll say something completely judgy about somebody and then tell me how non-judgmental they are. I think that over time, I think I still occasionally judge people, and I think at times we have to be judgmental because we don't know what we're getting into. Like, for example, and I don't know if this is necessarily judgmental, maybe it is, but if I'm walking in a bad part of town and I see a group of people dressed a certain way, looking a certain way, hands in their hoodies, and they're being loud, I got to make a judgment call really quick, not knowing who those guys are, of how close I want to get to them, and do I want to maybe cross the street. So you in some way you have to be, but yeah, I've tried very hard to not be, that judgmental of people who have maybe done bad things and are regretful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but we have to be aware, of a dangerous situation. And if your vibes are telling you danger, that's fine. You don't have to judge the person, just the situation.
Yeah, and that's hard. I've been in that too, where, I'll see a guy. There's someone I can think of right now who's just, very. You mentioned overweight, just very overweight, and I look at him and I go, that can't even be comfortable. I don't know, but you don't know what they're. I was just having this conversation with a therapist on this podcast. I said, when you have somebody who's that overweight, there's something else going on other than they just like donuts. You know what I mean? There's something.
Yeah. There's some pain there somewhere.
Yeah. But I think that's one thing I keep in mind every time I get myself down that road is I try to say to myself, remember that there's a war going on in their mind that you don't know anything about.
That's right.
And so everybody's going through something. I mentioned I'm Mormon, and I've served in leadership numerous times. And one thing I've learned in a leadership role is that I think in all churches, you probably experience this in the Catholic Church, if you go there to mass or church or whatever, and you see all those people that seemingly look perfect, I could tell you as being a leader that most of those people are definitely not, and most of them are kind of a train wreck. I mean, not necessarily, and I don't think that's specific to church people. I think everybody is dealing with something that is really hard.
We're human. We're imperfect. That's just the way that's the package we get.
Yeah. So after this life, we die. Do you think that you mentioned hierarchies and things like that? Do you think that it's a situation where we die, we're just hanging out in a cloud with a harp with wings and playing and
No,
singing every once in a while and haunting people? What do you think it is?
that would be fun. No, I've talked to enough people that have went there and stayed, and they got to go to the universities. They got to go to the place with all the books. You can go forward and backwards in time. You can go to all the other universes. You won't get bored. Because at one point, I remember saying to God, if all I'm going to do is listen to that same blasted angel chorus sing the same Hallelujah song for eternity, I'm out of here.
Yeah,
This is
I'd
so
rather go to hell.
boring, but I had an experience after that had that bliss thing. And all you got to feel is about 1 second of that bliss. And you think, oh, I want to do this all the time. So, but other people, like I say, I know hundreds of people that they've been in all kinds of different places. You can't get bored. I just, I'm looking forward to it now. I really am. And I know I mean, my dad and I are going to meet up. He was a pilot, and we're going to go fly. You can fly. We're going to go into a black hole because I've always wanted to know what was inside that. So that's one of the things my dad and I are going to do. My mom wants to lay on a beach and play chicken foot. This is a game. There's all kinds of stuff to do and all kinds of people to see that you didn't recognize on Earth. I think that's going to be a fun thing. All your soulmates that you thought, oh my God, I had this horrible neighbor. And it turns out to be one of your best friends up there that says, well, you wanted to be annoying so you could learn to be patient. I know it's going to be fun.
So I want to ask you more about that concept of soulmates real quick. So what is your understanding of what a soulmate is?
Well, it's being like a best friend up there. I mean, there's gazillions of souls. So like right now, I think that you and I were enough soulmates where we said, okay, this time we're not going to see much of each other. So we'll get together for about an hour. We'll kick something around. We'll have a good time. And then when we get back home, we'll say, oh, wasn't that fun?
Wow. That's a good concept. Do you think that there's a certain number of soulmates, or do you think it's just, wow?
No, I don't think so. I think it's people you're going to run into. It's like
it's interesting because there are some people that you run into and they immediately change your life,
right? And you say, where do I know you from? I know you. I've never met you, but you're so familiar. And that's one of the signals. Yeah.
It's interesting that you have that, and you can almost sense it when you finally sit down and talk with them, and you go, "There's something about you," know. And
we just clicked, that kind of thing.
And well, that's interesting. Let me ask you. I want to ask you a few questions I ask everybody. Okay. So these are kind of life questions. First, what would you say is your biggest success in life?
Success. Being able to touch people's lives and have them say, I'm so glad I ran into you today, or you've really helped me.
Yeah. What do you think is your biggest failure in life, and what did you learn from it?
I think not trusting that God hadn't abandoned me, that I don't think that anymore, thank heavens, because that's a terrible, dark place to be.
Was that when your daughter passed away, or?
Yeah, that was the worst.
How long ago was that before your experience?
Well, I was only 20 when I had her, so about 57 years ago.
Wow. So did you carry that feeling, even though you were going to church, did you carry that feeling for up until you had that experience, or did you get over that some other way?
No, I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand it. It's still so painful today.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Even though I know she's fine. And one thing that I've heard from some people is that that let's just take her example, that when she was born, her soul left. And the doctors operated, she was breathing and all of that, but she didn't feel any pain.
Mm,
Um, I've heard that of people that are going through terrible things, particularly children.
mm.
They step out of their body, and they're really not. Uh,
That's
I
interesting.
think, yeah, and that makes me feel better. I don't know, when you hear some tragedy with a child being kidnapped and all that stuff, you just think, oh God, I don't even
Yeah.
want to go there.
Did you do you feel, though, you said it still hurts today, but do you feel like your experience in going to the other side helped you kind of I guess kind of process that a little bit better?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I definitely could I got out of the picture on that. I understood that she and I decided to do that together.
Mm,
Again, I think she stepped out, and I learned a very valuable, many valuable lessons came out of that after the pain. Because if you don't experience excruciating pain, you cannot be empathetic.
yeah,
And that's the most helpful thing you can do for somebody
yeah.
is to say, I feel your pain, and have them say, yeah, I know you do. And can I just have a hug, to share that humanity.
Yeah, I think that's so important to remember because it is true. You go through some pretty traumatic things, and then when you hear others, they at least know they have somebody who understands them, and that's really
Exactly. Yeah.
do in on that real quick. Do you think what is your understanding of what would happen to your daughter? And what I mean by that is do you think she died and she's still a kid there? Is she going to be raised at some point, or is she just a soul over there and that's what happened and she's good?
I don't know. People don't really talk about seeing children over there. I think our soul is ageless.
Mm, mhm,
We're human, and we're in time, so we have age.
mm,
So no, I think her soul, whatever's, I know that souls can look like they want to look, like my friend, who looked like he was 35 instead of 53. So that you can recognize one another, but I think you could also recognize them if they were just an orb. A lot of people will see just a light, like a
mm,
bubble.
yeah.
So I don't know. I wasn't there long enough, but most people don't seem to have a problem recognizing souls.
Wow. Well, I'll ask you, this is the last question I ask everybody, and that is at some point you are gonna pass away, and it'll be for good this time. And
Yeah.
and when you do, there'll be a funeral and there'll be a eulogy. And what would you hope the one thing would be that someone would say in your eulogy?
She was a loving and kind person.
Yeah. I get that sense from you. I really do. You have a passion about you that I really appreciate, you
Well,
know?
thank you.
And I think the lessons that you've learned have been great. I'm sure when you tell your story that there are a lot of people who it instills a lot of hope, and there was probably some people that are real skeptical when they hear it.
Yeah.
Um, but I can tell that you believe it, and that you're passionate about it, and you've learned some great lessons on it, and I think that's really great.
Well,
So
good. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. For those who've listened to this, subscribe. We got a bunch of other things coming on. Do you have anything else in the works? Are you going to write another book? Are you going speaking anywhere? Where can people find you?
Yeah. The name of my book is Misfit In Hell to Heaven Expat, and that's my same title for my website. And so you can get in touch with me there. And I'm on a lot of YouTubes and that sort of thing. And yeah, I'd love to hear from them.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that, and thanks everyone for listening, and we will catch you again next time.